This is the second segment in our lesson on rhetorical devices or persuasive tactics. The first lesson was on logos. The second lesson is going to be on pathos. And I'd like to begin with an example from Oedipus Rex. This was an ancient Greek play about a king who, when he realizes the horrible truth at the end of the play about his situation, the things that he's done, the decisions that he's made, he's so disgusted with reality, with life, and with himself that he rips the pins off of his wife's shirt and gouges out his own eyes. And we can see what that might have looked like by some of these interesting images. At that moment, we feel what's called pathos. Well, that's an example from fiction, insofar as we know. When we use pathos in nonfiction, it's somewhat of a similar approach in that the first thing we want to do is create an emotional connection to the reader. So during that play about Oedipus, we are able to form a camaraderie with him. We walk right next to him. We understand that he's just like you and me. And when he makes a mistake, we feel bad for him because we realize that we probably would have made the same mistake. Again, we're able to form that connection. And we're not talking about sympathizing with Oedipus. We're talking about empathizing with him. Well, there's a second thing you have to do too, especially when it comes to writing an argument versus literature. And when you're writing an argument, as a writer, you not only want to establish an emotional connection with the reader, but you also want to use tone. That means using word choice that is going to shape your audience's perception of the subject matter. Well, let's begin by checking out this PSA on YouTube, and then we'll take a look at this ad by Mac. As you watch this PSA on YouTube, keep your eye out for the ways in which the author is asking you to connect with the subject matter on a personal and emotional level.
Stop texting and driving. If not for you, for me.
I'm going to pause it right there so that the text is still on the slide. There are two ways in which we're asked to connect to this PSA. The first way is the driver herself. We've all texted in situations where it was inappropriate because it's convenient to text and it seems easy and harmless. We've also been asked to connect to the victims. We all have a mom or some kind of mother figure in our lives, and none of us wants to see a baby die. At least nobody is going to admit that. So in these ways, this PSA is able to persuade us by asking us to create an emotional connection. Well, let's focus in now on using word choice. And even though that PSA does use word choice appropriately, let's look at a more overt example of somebody who's really trying to use word choice to do that. Check out this Mac ad. Do you see how the word choice is trying to persuade you that Mac is a superior machine and thus you ought to buy it. Let's move on. Pathos is also a Greek word, like logos, and it can also be translated in two different ways, which gives it some dimension. The first way you can translate pathos is as suffering. And when you hear suffering, you should think Oedipus, or think passionate. The other way that you can translate pathos is in the adjectival form, and that is experience, or life experience. That's where that anecdotal stuff comes in. So, in order to infuse pathos into an argument, these are the two key areas you want to look at. First, your hook. Second, your examples and evidence. Your hook is a great place to use an anecdotal lead to establish pathos, such as tone, emotional connection to the reader, right at the beginning of your piece. Then, somewhere in the examples or evidence portion of your argument, you might be able to sneak it in too. And this is why I say you might be able to, because it's really important to remember that of the three tactics, logos, pathos, and ethos, you want to go easy on the pathos. You always risk sounding emotional or irrational if pathos isn't used very carefully and in a contained manner. So, to wrap up, pathos, to be used in order to persuade, is doing two things. It's taking a very deliberate and close look at how narrative or anecdote is being used to establish an emotional connection to a reader, and also it is shaping the way that tone is guiding the reader through the piece. Don't forget to check out the other fun triggers on the image on ThingLink. Good luck!